Hi everyone, Comic Book Reviewer here. This time reviewing on issue 1 of Ultimate Comics Iron Man. Now, as you know, Ultimate Comics Iron Man, much like Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, and so forth, had these limited series. And I get it after the whole Ultimatum thing was being a little more creative with the universe and using what little characters were left after the big event. And the best way I would see Ultimate Comics is trying to work with whatever story was given and see if it can still stick. And the cover mainly has Ultimate Tony Stark getting ready for action, so let's get on with the story. It starts off how, on a train near Toronto, Canada, we see how some international terrorists try to make their way onto the train, and of course they say, "How much longer? 30 seconds!" And of course, we see how one person tries to stop them, Ultimate Iron Man. So of course, has to think through the solution, and tries to kind of counter a sort of reasonable strategy. And we see right away he decides to kind of hold back the train, Superman style. And right away we see how Iron Man takes on these sort of international terrorists. And of course we're introduced back then when Ultimate Tony Stark was much younger, working with obviously his girlfriend on their sort of own start-up company. And of course, we kind of see how his girlfriend is a little cautious of Howard. And of course, Tony knows right away that his father is the one that has the money and resources. And it's just obviously having to rely on someone as their own personal ATM. But you can tell Josie's not wrong for being cautious of Howard. But again, Howard just kind of expects Tony to be a little more responsible. And it's also clear that he just expects him to carry on the family legacy and expects him to make a new name for himself. And we see how, obviously, years later, Tony Stark showing up to the big presentation, and we see how right away something's not right, there's something going on behind the scenes. But we see how, obviously, Ultimate Tony Stark talks with Jarvis about everything that's up to date, and we see how he gets a message from Ultimate Carol Danvers about what happened with the transport. But of course, we kind of see how Ultimate Tony Stark is asked about the coin, but saying that it holds some historical value. And we kind of see right away Josie packing everything up and taking the company for herself, and obviously changing the name. And say what you want about Josie, she's not wrong for being cautious of Tony and seeing how obviously it's clear that he's going to go back to Howard, and obviously having to take the company as well as what there is left is her knowing that she has to do this on her own, and does feel hurt and betrayed that Tony ruined everything they could have had. But we see how Ultimate Tony Stark gets word on the TV that obviously a sort of plane crash had happened, and of course Josie was on board and ended up tragically dying. And we kind of see how obviously Ultimate Tony Stark is trying to keep his anger under control, but we see how Howard has a different form of idea to take his mind off it. Basically nanotech technology. And we kind of see right away something happens where Ultimate Tony Stark gets ready to get back into action, try and help the sort of security force, and right away figures something's going on. And we see how as soon as he gets to a transport, he sees obviously something sketchy happening, and turns out the phone that the unconscious guy was holding is from someone known as the Mandarin. And of course, Tony Stark's company ends up getting taken under control, his suit's gone haywire, and of course is gonna self-destruct, ending the story there. And I think my best thoughts about, obviously, Ultimate Comics Iron Man isn't the best issue, but again, it's trying to do something new and different from the whole main comics Iron Man one. And I think it's clear that after the whole 2000s, and after the previous Iron Man titles from the Ultimate lineup, I can see where Ultimate Comics Iron Man had to be a clean, different, and new take on Ultimate Tony Stark's origin. Kind of okay, kind of alright, but it still deserves our thumbs in the middle. Kind of alright, but kind of okay. So, Comic Book Reviewer here, signing out.